Well, hello, my lovely sixth graders. Here we go. Lesson on shapes of data distribution. Our essential question is going to be, what terms are used to describe the shape of data distribution? Now, when we're saying distribution, note that we are looking for how the information is arranged, so how it is displayed. So what can we tell from that arrangement? That's what we're looking for. Now we have 4 vocabulary words to help us to do this. The first one that you wrote down in your notes would be cluster. And you might have heard the word cluster before with like a cluster of grapes. It just means a group. So data that is grouped, and we're looking for it being grouped closely together. So when we have information that is grouped closely together, we call that a cluster. Next, we have a gap. And just like you might think, a gap would be an empty space or interval in a set of data. So far we have a close group called cluster, and then we have a gap, which would be an empty space or spaces. Next, peak. Peak, like when you think of a mountain, when you get to the peak of the mountain, it would be the very, very top. That's what we're looking for. So it's the most frequently occurring value in a line plot. So we use this when we see a line plot. So just like before, it's the mode, it's the one you see the most. And now to symmetric. When data is said to be symmetric, it basically means, and you already wrote this down, that the left side looks like the right side. So if you were going to cut it in half, flip them over each other, they would basically lay on top of each other. So it's pretty much evenly distributed. So it's the left side again, left side will look just like the right side. And those are the 4 words we're going to use to describe our pictures. So to our first example on the next page, it is with quiz scores. And hopefully you already have it set up, so now we can just start describing it using our 4 words and anything else we've learned. All right. So from here, I can see that from 17 to 19, I have a group, so a cluster of data entries, so data points. I also see that same thing, a group, so a cluster of information plotted from 21 to 23. So we could say there are clusters from, and then we would list these spots, 17 to 19 and 21 to 23. So we have those groups. Next, we can see the peak would be here. Here would be my peak because that's the one that has the most. In this case, 4 scores were 23. So the peak, the distribution has a peak of 23. So its tallest point is at 23. So in this case, can't remember. Anyways, the most common score was 23. And then there is a gap. So we're looking for that empty space. And so I have a gap here at 21. So we could say there is a gap at 20. And then finally, let's go back to something we already identified, any outliers. So do we see any outliers, any numbers way far away from each other or way far away from the group in itself? No, so there are no outliers. It is just that simple. All right, so you've had your first practice interpreting a line plot. So let's go to a box and whiskers plot, or a box plot. So here for the box plot, we see the number of books read. So it's books read. We're going to describe it. So noting, we note that the median is the line inside the box. So our median looks like it's at 15. Which we know at this point, it means 50% of the data is less than 15. And 50% of the data is more than 15. Excuse me. Gotta sneeze. All right. From here, notice that this left-hand side here, the box is much longer than here on the right-hand side. So what we could say is that because the boxes are not the same length, and let's identify the whole box and whiskers. So because this section here is not as long as this section, well, is longer than this section here, because each box and whiskers are not the same length, the data is not symmetrical. And we could have said that about the top as well. Notice if we cut it in half and we laid it over each other, the left side doesn't look like the right side. There's more here than if you had put it here. So it would not be symmetrical. So we could put that in too. Let's put that in. Not symmetrical. So it's not symmetric. All right, but going back to our books read, it's not symmetrical because from here, this halfway point, this is longer to the whiskers than it is from this halfway point to the other whiskers. So they're not symmetrical. But what we do see over here with this asterisk is that there is an outlier. Now, box plots are fantastic for being able to identify median very quickly and our limits, our lowest number and our highest number, so the range. What it is not good at showing, what it cannot show you, is if there's a gap. So you, excuse me, you cannot tell by looking at a box plot if there is a gap. All right, nor can you tell a peak. So that limitations you need to keep in mind. We will return and practice more in the next video. Bye.